Good morning, Mr. Sparks. We are here today to talk to you a bit about your business and where you want it to go. As you know, the economy has gone on a little bit of a downturn, especially in northern Alberta, where you are considering opening up another branch to your business. With that, we are Account for It Consulting. My name's Ashley, this is Kennix and Carrie. And to start off the day, we're just going to go through a little bit of how our presentation will run through. So first, we're going to explain the issues that you brought forward to us and how we're going to go about identifying them. Next, we'll go through our alternatives that you gave us, the options that you have seen for your company, as well as go through a bit of an analysis for you. Next, we'll give you a recommendation from the previous analysis, and then give you a little bit of an implementation on how to put it into action right away. So first off, the issues that we have identified to you, the most critical issue that we have seen for your company is whether or not you want to expand your rental store network. So you currently have 2 stores in Fort McMurray. However, you are mostly based in Ontario. Your primary issue is whether or not to purchase from one of the chains, acquire one of them, of the 3 that you mentioned that take up about 80% of the current market in Fort McMurray, or if you want to build a store for Komatsu from the ground up. The next issue that we run into is the impact on the financial statements going forward. You did want us to mention this to you, so we will later on. So a little bit on your external analysis here. So your opportunities, you can grow. The population in Fort McMurray is still growing, even if the economy has dialed back a little bit in the area. Komatsu is a very innovative company. This in turn can lead you to more technology and make you prosper in the long run. Threats to you include the 3 chains that I mentioned prior. They dominate the industry for the most part. There is very little room for you to actually penetrate them and get into the industry. As well, another threat is unknown oil prices. This is a very big issue because you are renting equipment to the oil field as a whole. Your customer, they are accustomed to cheaper prices. This is a big deal for you because the chains are able to give them lower prices than you as an independent can with your broader expanse of brands in-house. So your customer is also the oil sands and building industry. You're more focused on the oil sands, however, but bringing in Komatsu to help you out more will lead you more into the building industry because that's where most of their innovation is happening. For your industry, it's created by the oil sands. All of your demand, that's mostly where it is, apart from the small little housing market that is booming. As well, the industry is in a downturn because of the oil. Just going to pass it off to Kennix to do a little bit on the internal.
Your strengths right now are that you have a relationship with Komatsu, a very good relationship. You are their #1 retailer in Canada. And also, you're the largest construction equipment dealer in Ontario. You have this base, and you have an ability to expand if you so wish. Your opportunities to improve, however, is you have a focus on growing your sales and your stores, on expanding. And we've noticed that in 2013, for some reason, we weren't given exact details, but we did notice your net income was quite lower, although the rest of the years they seem to be on roughly the same sort of line. We were wondering if that had anything to do with potentially your account receivables or any sort of cash inflows and outflows. And also your perspective the perspective of Fort McMurray residents. So you are based in Ontario, and your options right now are to build from, the options that you mentioned to us were to build from scratch, to take over a chain, and also you did mention that you wanted, one of the agreements was to entirely use Komatsu, which is a Japanese company. And in Canada, we are more accustomed to American products and American ways. So the perspective of your customer base may be slightly different. Maybe they're not familiar with the equipment, or they have a different view of you as a company because you're Ontario-based. Your constraints are financing, of course. Cash is king. You need to be able to finance this expansion. And the customer base, as we mentioned before, if you need to expand, is there a market there for you to go to? Your financials are you're overpaying. If you were to take over and acquire that chain, you would be overpaying them, as you mentioned. and losing money on Fort McMurray companies. Your two footholds right now, you are losing money in those in our current economy. So your alternatives for today is to exit Fort McMurray, as I mentioned before, excuse me, you are losing money currently because of the economic downturn, because of the drop in oil prices. Acquire a chain in Fort McMurray, and then through that, have that be your expansion, or to build a Komatsu store expansion from the ground up. So this would be looking at areas where you believe would be prosperous in the future and building from there. Now I will pass it on to Carrie for assumptions.
Okay, to arrive at numbers, we had to make a few assumptions. You said that you figured the companies that you were looking to acquire would be worth between 3 to 5 times their before tax income. We averaged that to 4 to come up with a number. We did the same thing for the numbers that the companies would want for their valuation price. When we came up with our purchase price for one of them, we averaged out to compromise at 5.5 because it's square in the middle of both ranges. You said there's a 10% decline coming in 2016 for your stores in Fort McMurray. We had to extend that to include that, assume it was for the whole market, and therefore everyone else in that market would also have the same 10% decline. And then we also assumed that the 20% decline coming up in end of 2015 was also market-wide and included in the numbers that we were provided, since we weren't given much information beyond just the numbers for the chains. And we also assumed that if you acquired a chain, then you would also acquire their customer base.
So moving on here, your expansion opportunities. We're just going to go through a little bit of analysis of what you can do with these and how we came to our recommendation for you.
For the Fort McMurray market, on your 2 stores that are already existing, we noticed that the statements that we were given to, the financials on those stores we were given for projections for the next 5 years, were based on a 15% growth for 2015 and on, when it was stated that there would be a decline of 20% in 2015 in the market and a further decline of 10% in 2016. So we had to refigure those and then assume from 2016 on we'd at least stay level, no decline. So over the next 5 years, that would give you a loss of $12.4 million in the Fort McMurray market. We do know that eventually the oil market will turn around, because everybody in the world has this demand for energy sources, and the oil sands are one great big resource for that. And the stores themselves right now would only be worth what the assets are worth if it sells, because there's clearly going to be a loss soon in their market. So it couldn't depend on any kind of goodwill or anything like that to bring the value of that up.
Your pros for your current market and to exit Fort McMurray market is your salvage value. You wouldn't have any further losses because it would end right there. However, cons, you would lose your footholds in Fort McMurray. You lose that market in Fort McMurray essentially, and to re-enter that market may prove a difficulty in the future. You would also lose your connection to Komatsu. Komatsu is really pushing this idea of expanding and having Komatsu stores in Alberta. If you decline this offer, they will move on to your competitor, and you would lose that good relationship you currently have. And also you would lose your investment. You started this store up, but you're currently at a loss, and you would lose all potential for further profits.
Okay, the information given us showed us what the potential was for building the Komatsu stores from the ground up, and it clearly showed, purely numbers given, a loss of $14.7 million over the next 5 years. And this to us doesn't seem like it would be feasible or a good suggestion for your business to go in that direction because of this loss.
So to build your Komatsu store from ground up, your pros would be that you would maintain that relationship. You are taking their offer and getting that loan and expanding their reach within Alberta. And you're increasing the network of rental stores, which was one of the issues you brought up, which you wanted to do, and you would tap into that market further. Cons, however, it is a big investment. You are investing time and money into these stores, into these areas that may not profit. You are using your projections to find which areas are prosperous, but at the end of the day, they are essentially projections. There is still chance in there. So you are putting a large investment in for currently a very poor economy. And it's also experimental to say. You would be going into areas that you are not familiar with or wouldn't have that sort of construction company there already. So right now you have your 2 stores and you are familiar with the area there. But if you expand into other stores, you don't know whether, once again, it's projections. You're not sure whether that customer base will require you or if they'll accept Komatsu equipment. It's all within an assumption and a projection.
Okay. If you buy the chain and add Komatsu equipment over the next 5 years, we looked at all 3 chains. For Transverse, you would have $33.5 million income over the next 5 years. Caledon Center, 50.7, and Vanguard Equipment Rentals, 26.9. Now these numbers do include, or are before taxes, and do include the downturn that is predicted in the market over 2015 and 2016.
And to buy a chain and transform it into Komatsu based, the pros of this would be there is a chain there already. You know that this is a prosperous area and that these chains have been there for a long time now. And you would also still be increasing that network of rental stores, which was your goal from the beginning, and you would still maintain your good Komatsu relationship. However, cons, you are paying a premium, as mentioned before, on the purchase of this chain, as they value it higher than what you value it because they have been there for so long and they understand the economy there.
So our decision on this point of which direction you should take your store is to buy the chain and add Komatsu equipment to it. So you would you'd earn profits in order to cover your losses from your current 2 businesses in Fort McMurray, and it would increase your rental store network, as well as greatly increase your connection with Komatsu to potentially further once the market picks back up. So next on our list is which chain you should actually purchase of the 3 mentioned.
We looked at several areas for each chain. For Caledon, there was experience with equipment, what they're worth at 4 times EBIT and what they're worth at 6.5 times EBIT. For Caledon Center, they're familiar with Caterpillar and Hitachi, which means they've already gotten a Japanese brand in their stores. And they're worth $202 million to $329 million. Transverse Rentals go with Caterpillar and Banford for their experience. And they're worth $134 million, $217 million. And Vanguard Equipment Rentals have Caterpillar and Banford equipment experience. And they go from $107,000 to $174,000, or $174 million, $107 million, $174 million. We think you should go with Caledon Center. The main reason for this is that they have the largest share of the current market of the 3 chains. So when you purchase them, you'll be purchasing the largest share of the market in the area. And it would be worth the goodwill to actually offer them slightly more than we would want to give them, even though it's still slightly less than they're asking. at 5.5 times the income for the next 5 years.
So our recommendation. We're recommending to you that you purchase Caledon Center. This allows you to keep your current locations while making money to cover the losses and maintain your company for the future. You'll be able to expand your rental store network. This is a big thing right now. Just because the market is currently low, it will aid you in the future. So as mentioned by Carrie, the compromise price that we are hoping to go with is 5.5 times EBIT over the next 5 years. So over the next 5 years, you'll get about, or no, the price over the next 5 years is $278.8 million with an ROI of 18% for you. So the future impact on the financial statements going forward. As we mentioned earlier, this was something you brought up to us, and we just wanted to touch on it briefly for you to give you an idea about how it will impact you in the long run. So you will have the consolidation of a new subsidiary into your financial statements. It will pretty much be mushed into your income statement and balance sheet. You will also have goodwill appear in your assets at about 0.5 times the projected income over your next 5 years. So implementation, right now, right away, you need to obtain your loan from Komatsu in order to acquire Caledon. So once you have obtained this loan, you're going straight into negotiating the acquisition of Caledon. So I'm going to pass it off to Kenix for the rest of the implementation here.
So between 0 and 6 months, complete your negotiations and begin the acquisition and build a relationship with Caledon staff. Spending the time and effort to have to hire an entirely new staff to work with this equipment and having the impression that you are releasing the previous company staff is not something that you want. So begin your relationship with them, make it good, train them to fit the Komatsu equipment if there is any difficulties in that, and begin that steady process of acquiring that company and making it yours. Between 6 to 12 months, exchange of Caterpillar and Hitachi for Komatsu equipment. You want these stores, you mentioned, to be Komatsu stores. That is part of the loan. That is part of the loan agreement that Komatsu provided you with. And to connect to the Caledon customer base. This was an issue that we brought up previously, that with any exchange of owners, customers tend to be a little more reluctant to immediately jump in. You're not familiar anymore. You're not what they used to know. Therefore, connect to the Caledon customer base and let them know who you are and that you are with them. And after 1 year from now, or at 12 months, to have your grand reopening of sorts, to fully let the public know that now you are a Komatsu company and you are no longer what Caledon was previously. We understand that this is a big change and this is a big investment, but in order to get big profits, big investments must be made. So we outlined some risks and mitigation for you. Some of the risks, a low probability risk right now, is return from Caledon doesn't cover the loss from your current companies. The severity of this would be high. However, that is unlikely, as even if it doesn't cover entirely your loss, it will support the loss. You have an Ontario income right now in your Ontario base, and if there are further problems, Komatsu really wanted to push this and have Komatsu companies, so you can negotiate with them or talk to them about obtaining a loan. Furthermore, lose Caledon customer base. Moderate probability, moderate severity, as you will be building connections with them and Komatsu has innovative machinery and it is very appealing. And another risk is the oil market doesn't recover. Probability of this is slightly higher as it won't recover immediately. There is some time where you will be suffering from losses, and the severity of that is low as you have planned for this, and you will diversify your market and not go straight into.
So just to wrap things up quickly for you, you will have an increase in your rental store network by purchasing Caledon and turning it into a Komatsu store. You'll be well known for building connections, as well as you'll become a founder in innovation. So this will help you with building into the technology that Komatsu has to offer. You'll also become a leader in a very prosperous industry, as soon as that market picks back up, you will be able to sell as much as you want.
Thank you. That concludes the presentation portion, and now we'll go into the question and answer period.
Thanks for your presentation. The main question I've got here is, what if they won't take 5.5%? This is a very cyclical market. Commodities go up and down. That's why there's no discount when they're in a down. So they know that they can hold out and get 6 or 7, or they can just keep operating. So have you thought about what your strategy is or how it changes if they won't accept the 5.5 multiplier?
Actually, they know they're not worth that much. They're only worth 3 to 5 times their income over the next 5 years. So if you start with the average that we projected at 4 and move up from there and be willing to go as high as that 5.5 times, then they should start at their 7 and come down, and you'll eventually meet in the middle. Negotiations are often like that, and you have room to, if you start with that low number, you have room to go up and make them feel like, well, they're willing to come up to meet us, maybe we'll go down to meet them also.
And just to follow the financing part of that, how are we going to fund our part? So Komatsu's not giving us 100% of the money. How are we going to fund that, and how does that blend in with the whole picture? Are we still staying positive with our cash flows over the next 5 to 10 years?
We will be able to fund over the next few years because of that new company you will be buying. It will aid in your purchase in the long run. You may have to gather another loan from the Business Development Bank of Canada, maybe your bank. We were not provided with a full list of your current cash accounts or anything, so we do not know how much cash you have on hand in order to invest right away. We'd have to take another look at that for you.
Can I ask a question about the product mix? Currently, we're operating 2 Komatsu stores that lose money in Alberta, and now we're going to acquire a bunch more, change out all the product, which is currently profitable, to Komatsu product, which we've demonstrated we can't do profitably in that market. Do you have operating or other issues that you can talk about related to that?
Your Komatsu stores would be mostly focused on the building equipment, of small equipment to build houses, whereas your current stores have different types of equipment. So we would entirely focus on building equipment for those new Komatsu stores. And they're very innovative, and they have smaller and different types of machinery. So that would be what we would advertise and focus on.
We would also be keeping the staff that currently staffs the chain that we would be purchasing. That way the customers have familiar faces to see when they come in, and people who know how to talk to them would be able to explain the new equipment.
I'll ask a quick question just on the numbers. So I'm just a little confused. On the Caledon, we were estimating 50 million about over the next 5 years in income, so 10 million a year, is that right? Or is it 50 million each year?
It was about 10 million a year. Yeah.
And then we were going to buy it for 202 to 329? I'm
Yes.
just not quite sure how the return on investment would have been 18% with those numbers.
The return on investment was figured with the 4 times number. So the total 5-year income projection divided by the 4 times that to get our rough ROI, and then from there we figured that if you moved it up to the 5.5, that it would go down to 18% by the same math. And so the numbers are all in the appendices of the appendices. Appendix 4, I believe.
We can have one more question.